Hi friends, it's Maya here today, and I'm back at you again with another exciting YouTube video. If you don't know who I am, I'm Maya, and I am a 20-something transsexual woman who makes content on YouTube, all sorts of different topics, lifestyle content, anything you can really imagine. But today's video is on the topic of how to date a trans woman or a transsexual woman, whichever, preferred terminology you like to use. I realized I've never done a video on this topic really, like so specifically on my channel, and I think it's overdue. It's one of my most requested questions and topics on this channel since I started making content. So I thought, what better time than now to impart some of my words of wisdom and to really, I feel like, educate people on the experience of being a transsexual woman and what we look for in a partner and the dating experiences that we seek out, and basically all around respect. Don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification button for constant updates and content. I try to make videos every single week. And I also have my other socials linked down below, my Instagram, my Twitch, my TikTok, everything. Now I'm going to divide today's video in a bunch of different topics, and I'm going to have them outlined in different chapters. We're going to go through everything, and it's going to be a major deep dive. And if you're wondering what this little black box is, it's just my wireless mic. Last time I tried to hide it between my chest, but then you guys said you could see a glowing light coming out from between my cleavage, and I was like, you know what? That's more distracting than just having the mic pack show. A little bit of the movie magic is gone, but hello, like I'm a content creator, not an actress in a Hollywood film. So the first topic I want to dive into is how to treat a trans woman in a relationship. So I think it's so important to, right off the top, say that we want to be treated just like any other girl. We don't want to be treated differently. We don't want to be treated specially. We don't want to be made to feel other than. And that just goes back to us kind of being marginalized within society and already being made to feel ostracized throughout our life, different chapters of our life. The last thing we really want to do is stand out and be made to feel that we're different or a different tier or a different type or a different, you know what I mean? Like we're just first and foremost human beings. I know I'm speaking from my own experiences, but I think it's so important to, acknowledge that we obviously have a different set of struggles and things that we overcome in our lives, and there are inherent differences between us and someone who is born female. However, we do not want to be made to feel, different or singled out for any reason in particular, especially certain reasons. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get specifically from men is like, where can I find trans women to date? I'm interested in dating trans women. That in and of itself is a little bit of a red flag for me personally, because it tells me that you care less about who the person is and more about what they are. And that is something that is a red flag for most trans women when it comes to dating. And I would say, like, we all have our preferences. So I understand you might be seeking out a certain experience, and I don't judge you for that. However, first and foremost, you have to be treating people with respect and understand that we are human beings first and foremost and not just an experience. So I think keeping those things in mind, it's important. But I do understand that there are always going to be people that are seeking trans women. While I don't have like a specific answer for this, we are everywhere. Like we're on dating apps, we're on Bumble, Tinder, we're on Raya, we're on everything. And so to try to find one specific spot for us, it's not really such an easy answer. Some of us will disclose it in our bios. Some of us won't, You can always find people on social media and reach out that way. But as long as you're approaching things from like, a bit of a Riz perspective and you have a little bit of something going on and you're not just like blindly shooting your shot in the dark for like fetishistic purposes, then I feel like you might have a chance, And I will also say a lot of people don't know this per se. If you're in the community, you probably know this, but there are some options on apps like Grindr to specifically search for trans women or trans people or trans experience. And so if that's your thing, you can definitely look on there and you'll find profiles and things. I'm sure they have stuff on like OkCupid as well. And I'm not going to judge because, we all have different things we're going through in life. We all have different experiences we want to seek out. And for that reason, stuff like that can be like a good facilitator for those moments. Do I think you'll necessarily find like the most meaningful long-term relationships on those types of apps? Maybe not. I don't know. Stranger things have happened, so who knows? But basically, there's sometimes some of those interactions going on those sites. I wouldn't necessarily recommend any specific apps or anything like that that are just like 100% specific to trans amorous people, because I find, especially from the perspective as a transsexual, it's like you tend to find people who are just fetishizing when they're just looking for one thing, right? And what I've tended to experience going through dating is that the men that I've dated, they've been interested in not just, women like me, but really anyone across the spectrum who is, feminine or whatever. It's not always just, because of one specific reason. And I think that's very affirming because it really makes you feel included in society rather than as this like separate tiered thing that's treated differently. While we're still on that topic, another header I want to discuss is that if you are DL or on the down low, for those of you who don't know, then you probably shouldn't be seeking out interactions with trans women. I feel like that is a huge red flag for us. And I would never encourage any like trans women to seek out validation or experiences with people who are DL, because on a baseline, it's just like a disrespect to who you are as a person. I mean, it's like 2024. Come on, people. Like, let's move on with our lives. People are gay, people are bi, people are trans amorous, people are everything in between. Why are we still holding shame and, homophobia internalized in today's society? I think it's just so archaic. And it's just such a red flag. So I definitely don't recommend anyone reaching out to trans people if that's your experience, because that's just toxic. It's basically like saying like, I am ashamed to be attracted to you. I am ashamed of you. Like, I don't want to be seen in public with you. And I will say I've never like personally had that experience. And I think it's a privilege that comes with people who pass for, the sex that they want to be identified with. And that's a privilege that I don't take for granted. However, I have, encountered people even on my, experience who have said that they're DL because even the thought of being with a trans woman or someone finding out that they were the trans woman, no matter how beautiful they are, no matter when they transition, no matter how many surgeries they've had, even the thought of it is enough to repel them and make them insecure. And so that goes without saying that, no matter who you are, no matter what your experience is, if you're, a trans woman, there are going to be men who are going to be ashamed at the idea of being with you, regardless of whether or not you look like a Victoria's Secret supermodel or you look like Shrek with a Dollarama wig. It doesn't matter. Like, it's who you are and your identity is what they are ashamed of, not necessarily what they're attracted to. You know what I mean? So all of that goes without saying. But definitely, like, if you're someone who is ashamed or feeling a sense of shame, then you are not at the place that you need to be in order to, find, romance in the trans community. Another important topic to touch on that I get asked about a lot is when it comes to intimacy with dating. I would categorize it into two separate compartments, one for pre-op experience and one for post-op experience. And I can now say that I have experience with both. So pre-25, I was completely post-op or pre-op. My goodness, I was pre-op. When I was 25 and under. And that experience was quite different for me because I feel like with a lot of trans people, we like have a sense of shame about our own bodies and we're very insecure and we know we're not the norm. And so we carry a lot of that internalized shame with us, and it can affect our relationships and our, intimacy with our partners. And I would say that your job as the partner is to make your partner feel comfortable in their own skin and to make them feel beautiful. So I think it's so important that you instill that sense of confidence into your partner and make them see how beautiful they are, Like, I've had partners in the past and they really lifted me up on a pedestal and made me feel more confident than I ever was prior to those relationships. So I think it can be a really important tool for trans people to experience that kind of gratification because, hey, if it could happen to me, it could happen to you too. And I think keeping that positivity and boost to your self-esteem is so important. And I think it's integral for, you as the partner of the trans person to make them feel confident. And that's the same as with any woman, born female or not. Like, we all have insecurities with our bodies. There's not, just because you're trans doesn't mean that your case is just so much different and like you're on planet, Jupiter and everyone else is on planet Mars. Like, no. Everyone has insecurities. Everyone has things that they're dealing with and going through. So it's totally normal. But I think as trans people, we're often made to feel more so ashamed of who we are. And so taking that into mind and trying to erase that from your partner and make them feel more confident is just so important. And also just using communication to figure out maybe their boundaries, what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, It's just so important, and communication goes a really, really long way. I've personally found that all the long term relationships that I've been in, the men have interchangeably dated born females and trans women. I don't necessarily know like what the ratio is or whatnot like that. Like, I don't really care about that, for instance. But to know that it's something that's more interchangeable is more affirming to me in my womanhood. Because, say, for instance, your partner is pretty much only dating men or trans women. I mean, I've never really encountered that, to be honest, but like I could see how maybe if you're like earlier on in your transition, you might feel less validated by a partner who sees you more as a male. And that can, in and of itself, be toxic for you and your transition. I've had a couple people inquire about that and say that, like, they were a gay man before they transitioned and they still have a partner that like doesn't want them to transition, or they have someone who's interested in them if they don't you know what I mean? Like, there's all these barriers, and I would say that you have to do what's true for you as a person first and foremost, and you shouldn't live your life a certain way just to please a partner. If you're interested in pursuing a long-term relationship with a trans person, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and assume it could be like any other relationship. You don't want to string along a trans person if you know down the road that you will 100% need to have biological children with your partner, and they must be able to get pregnant and XYZ, like things that we would not fulfill, and you have that in your mind for whatever reason, then you have to understand that and be open from the start, because otherwise it's just as unfair as stringing along anyone for any reason. So I think that's so important. I also think that down the road, you should be willing to open up to your parents about the experience and about who you're dating, because that's something that I think is so important. If you are carrying shame and you're not telling your parents about them, then that means that you fear what people think still, and you still have some of that internalized homophobia. Of course, every situation's different, and you might be doing it to protect your partner, and you might say in your head, okay, like, I can't control my parents, and I know they're not going to react, you know, appropriately, and this could completely damage everything. Like, obviously, if there's irreparable damage that could be done and it's not necessary, then like do what you need to do in order to save your family and your relationship. And there's always nuance. I'm not going to tell you like what's right or what's wrong, but I think in most scenarios, if you give people the opportunity to learn and to grow and to accept you, then I think that's more important. And I also think that if that's the response they're going to have, maybe in some ways they don't really deserve to be in your life as much as you think they do. Because who you are and who you like is so core to who you are as a human being. And if they're not able to see that and accept that, then what does that say about them? So it just comes back to mutual respect and understanding, and nothing's worse if you're a trans person if you have to like kind of keep your identity a secret around certain family, because then you feel like you're walking on eggshells and you're like, who's gonna find out? And you know what I mean? It just creates a toxic, swirling environment that's not healthy. I keep reiterating this, but at the end of the day, trans women are just like any other woman. We don't want to be treated differently. We just want to be treated with respect. We want to be romanced. We want to be, made to feel beautiful and special in our own way. We don't want to be fetishized. We don't want to be objectified. We don't want to be, held into a different category and put into a different box. Are there differences? Yes, yes, there are. We understand them. And I will say there's an important study that I wanted to highlight, and I'll link down below. A lot of people question, is it gay to date trans women? Is it bisexual to date trans women? Is it heterosexual to date trans women? I think there's a huge difference between, dating a trans woman pre and post op, depending like what you're comfortable with. That being said, there was a study done, which I'm linking down below, and it basically observed the attraction instincts of different types of men towards different types of women. And across the boards, gay men scored the lowest on the attraction scale towards trans women. So I think we can verifiably say that if you are attracted to trans women, you are not gay. Not that it really matters, but just for, science's sake. And then for the straight men, like I guess the opposite end of the spectrum, they exhibited higher levels of attraction towards trans women who had had more surgeries and were more passing for, born at birth females, like biological females. They were obviously more physically attracted to that. But upon like societal impact of the stigma of figuring out, okay, this person's actually trans, the attraction went from here to, a downward slope. So that kind of shows how physical attraction can still be there for heteronormative relationships with trans people, but the societal stigma can be one of the factors that removes that attraction. What's more, the ones that were not as far along in their transition were not perceived as attractive by heterosexual men, which honestly makes sense. Like if you are visually perceiving someone who you can tell was assigned male or born male at birth or whatever, then obviously you're not going to be as into that. It's 1 + 1 = 2. That being said, there was a subset of trans amorous men that were identified throughout the process, and they kind of existed in a separate space from the gay men and the heterosexual men. And so it's almost like this like gray area third thing. It's not quite heterosexual, it's not quite gay, it's something else. Their thing is something different. And that's okay too, And this study, I'm not trying to like put a label on everything or try to name everything or put people in, but who cares, At the end of the day, like we're all human beings. We like what we like, some people like chubbier people. Some people like skinnier people. Some people, like people with long hair. At the end of the day, I think we just have to kind of stop giving a and just live our truth and live our lives and not care about who other people are attracted to or who we're attracted to. I find, obviously men are one of the larger contributors to hate online towards trans people because they always want to be like, two men, it's a gay relationship, it's gay, it's like, who cares? We don't care if you think it's a gay relationship. Like, I'm just living my life and, I'm just like anyone else looking for love and happiness. It doesn't matter, but I think that those obsessions and those name callings come from a deep-rooted sense of insecurity in themselves. They either want to be us or be with us. That's kind of my mentality and what I've realized over time. And then there's also a interesting subset of women that also come on to trans people's platforms and leave a lot of vitriol. And for them as well, I feel like, maybe they're having some insecurities. They're feeling a little bit jaded. Maybe their man left them for a trans woman. Maybe they, are jealous that a trans woman has had a harder set of obstacles to overcome and they came out on top and they're more successful and more happier than, the cis woman is or the biological female is, whatever you want to call it. I don't really care at this point. There's always like reasons, and my advice in those circumstances is always to say that you never want to take the advice or the opinions or the experiences from people that you don't know and that you don't respect or admire, If you admire my content, if you value my experiences and my input, then take what I say to heart, Like I'm only here to share my resources from my perspective. That's all I can really do, you know? We're always wading through the water on these topics. There's not a ton of studies, even though I did link one down below. But basically, like, you know, attraction, life, everything is just such a vibrant spectrum. And I think at the end of the day, we're all just trying to find happiness. It does not matter. Like, we like who we like. Who cares? Who really cares, you know? I know this video was kind of a little bit more from the perspective of like people seeking out trans relationships and not necessarily dating tips for trans women who are looking to find long-term relationships. So if you're interested in a video that's more on that topic, more for my dolls, my trans girls, my transsexuals, let me know. I'll do a video on that as well. I have had 2 long-term relationships, one much more long-term than the other, but I definitely have some advice and some tips and tricks that I learned over the years, and just, you know, relationship advice in general that's good for any man, woman, child, they, them, it thing. Things are so universal, and I think that makes me feel a lot more comfortable in my skin and a lot less alone in the world when I realize that everyone's going through struggles, you know, everyone has their issues. You are not alone, and I think that's the takeaway for today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's content and you found it educational and informative. As always, if you have more questions, leave them down below. Don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification for constant alerts and updates for whenever I post or do my live streams. I'm always going live here and we hang out one-on-one, and it's so much fun. We take down the trolls and we just kiki and gossip. I do Twitch live streams as well throughout the week. My Twitch link is down below too. Right now I'm streaming Fortnite of all things, which I never thought I'd do, but it's so much fun, and I even play with my viewers, you guys. So always check that out if you're bored or you want some, you know, background banter. And as well, I've got my Instagram, my TikToks, and everything down below. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I look forward to doing new videos for you guys. We're gonna own 2024. It's gonna be so much fun. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.